Hi, hello, and welcome back to F1 Challenge Career Mode. My name is Mephisto, and today we're heading off to Malaysia for round 2 of the 2001 Formula 1 season. Let's get started.
Located approximately 80 kilometers south of Kuala Lumpur, the modern Sepang circuit combines two notable straights with a demanding mix of slow and medium-speed turns. This dedicated motorsports facility is the first of a new breed of circuit capable of housing over 100,000 spectators.
And we jump straight into qualifying. This was my first attempt, which wasn't all that good to be honest. I was quite slow, and that lap time was a 1:47.008 seconds. A little bit later on, I went out again. This time I felt that I was a bit faster. And indeed I was, with a time of 1 minute 24.229 seconds, almost 3 seconds faster than the previous attempt, which indeed was comparatively faster. However, this was my overall fastest lap of the session. In fact, I kept getting slower and slower as the session progressed. See you on the grid.
Hello there. Welcome to Malaysia for round 2 of the 2001 FIA Formula 1 World Championship. The weather, as so often is the case here, is just wonderful. Over 30 degrees and climbing. It's a fantastic day for Formula 1. Juan Pablo Montoya first. Michael Schumacher second. Hakkinen third. Coulthard fourth. Ralf Schumacher fifth. Raikkonen sixth. Barrichello seventh. Heidfeld eighth. Heinz-Harald Frentzen ninth. Eddie Irvine consistently outpaced his championship rival. He starts 10th. Button 11th. Jos Verstappen 12th. Giancarlo Fisichella 13th. Trulli 14th. Alonso 15th. Olivier Panis just got the edge over his teammate. He starts from 16th. The BAR driver 17th. Bertie 18th. Jean Alesi 19th. De La Rosa 20th. Bernaldi 21st. Tarso Marquez 22nd.
Here we are on the grid, and as you can probably see, I was all the way at the back in 17th. And this could cause some problems. The lights went out, and almost immediately, Jean Alesi, who was right behind me, drove straight into the rear of my car, breaking off my rear wing. I was quite annoyed about that at the time, but there was nothing more I could do other than radio in and tell the pit crew to prepare another wing. Here's a replay of the start. I moved over to the right to keep Alesi behind. He then smashed into me, and we can also see that one of the Saubers has stalled on the grid. There he is, right at the back. Here is a view from onboard Jean Alesi's Prost. I moved slightly over, and Jean Alesi made absolutely no attempt to avoid me. I'd say that that was his fault, really. At least that's how it seems to me. And we are now riding with Eddie Irvine, and that was the Sauber of Kimi Raikkonen that stalled. Quite disappointing for him, really. But now, as Irvine was approaching turn 1, he slammed into the rear of Rubens Barrichello. That was not a good start, and now I had to be careful not to damage the car further. And somehow, my teammate managed to damage his engine in just a few seconds of racing. Here is the replay. As Olivier Panis's car bursts into flame, he must have been over-revving his engine quite a lot to manage to destroy it so quickly. Anyway, my focus now was on bringing the car back to the pits in one piece, replace my rear wing, and push as hard as I could. One thing was clear though, as I almost lost control of the car, one thing was clear. I wasn't going to score any points in this race. It just wouldn't be possible. And this first lap still had some surprises. As we take a look at Jenson Button, who hits Irvine from behind and then is himself hit by his own teammate. This is a view from Fisichella's car, who is right behind the minority of Fernando Alonso. There was plenty of room to go around, but he chose to go straight through his teammate. This really is a crazy first lap. Then I lost control of my car through the hairpin, and again I got hit by Jean Alesi. What are the odds of that happening? So here's a replay. I applied a bit too much power on the corner exit, causing me to spin, and then Alesi drove straight into me, so now I had no wins left on my car. All thanks to one man, I have to say. And I was really annoyed at this point, especially since I was going to spend so much time in the pits. At the end of the lap, I came in to replace my rear and front wings, and this is going to give me a 40-second disadvantage. Anyway, I cut ahead to where I was just about to leave the pit box, 49.5-second pit stop, and at this point I could hear the front runners approaching fast, but it was time to see whether or not I could recover my race. On lap 6, I eventually caught up to the back of the pack, and I just overtook Fisichella, moving me up the order. I was now back at where I was when we started, P17, but considering how much time it took to catch up, and that I had to pit at least once more, I knew there was no way I could possibly score any points, unfortunately. But my new objective was to finish as best as I could in the time I still had, and I am now coming up on Sean Alesi, the man who effectively ruined my entire race. And I was so tempted to take him out of the race, but I didn't do it. It wasn't really worth it if you think about it. Plus, that would have made me just as bad as the AI. Anyway, I was now having a look on the inside. I managed to outbrake a Lacey and was now in P16. Next was Tarso Marquez, around 11 seconds ahead. I had to push. I was near the end of lap 7 when I managed to close the gap on Marquez a bit. The gap was now a little over 8 seconds, but somewhere on the track there was an accident. So let's have a look. We are riding with Mika Hakkinen, who has the Williams of Ralf Schumacher in front of him. As they came through the first part of this double apex right-hander, Hakkinen slightly clipped the rear of the Williams, causing Mika to lose control of the car. Luckily for them, it wasn't anything more serious, and I was now catching Marquez at a great rate, so I should be able to be right beside him by the end of this lap. That was what I thought anyway, but people are now starting to pit. Later on lap 8, I caught up to Enrique Bernoldi, who seems to have went off the track for some reason. So I decided to take advantage of his lack of momentum and try to go for a pass. That was easy, and I could now see Tarso Marquez just in front of me, who was a little over 3 seconds ahead. But it's time to see what happened to Bernoldi. Here are the Minardi and arrows of Tarso Marquez and Enrique Bernoldi respectively. As he came through the right-hander, Bernoldi had a look on the inside, however, he clipped the rear of the Minardi and went off the track, giving me the opportunity to pass. As we were coming through the final corner of the lap, I was right on Marquez's gearbox, and he peeled off into the pits, giving me his position. However, I still had to make my second stop, so it was anyone's guess where I would end up. Top 10 would be nice, but even that seemed a bit too much to ask for at this point, so I had to settle for whatever I could. On lap 10, I caught up to Pedro de la Rosa, and he proved to be quite a challenge to overtake. I had a look on the inside there, but I didn't feel that I could pass him without any problems, so I held back. But as we exited the double apex right-hander, I managed to line myself up perfectly for a pass. However, De La Rosa was not about to give up the position so easily, but I managed to squeeze him out through the hairpin, so I was now in P12, and 8 seconds behind Kimi Raikkonen. It seems that he managed to start his car after all. We are now watching a replay of an incident between Fisichella and Alesi. Fisichella slightly clips the rear of the Prost, but he managed to keep the car under control, unlike everyone else who made that same mistake through that same corner. And I was now thinking about making my second stop, which under normal circumstances would have been my only pit stop. This was lap 11, and I was catching Raikkonen by about 1 second per lap. But since I still had to pit, that wouldn't really help in the long run. All the while, Fisichella managed to blow his engine. Here is Fisichella with the Prost of Sean Alesi behind him. They enter turn 1 and all seems okay at the moment, but a fraction of a second later Fisichella's engine bursts into flame. I definitely wouldn't want to be the guy behind him in that situation. So that's one more retirement and a free spot for me. Meanwhile, Raikkonen was starting to increase the gap between the two of us. That was okay though because I decided not to bother anyway, since I knew I couldn't catch him. On lap 12 I make my second pit stop, which should have been my only one, but I had to pit on lap 1 as well because of a certain someone, so I was at a disadvantage. That was a nice stop, to be honest. At this point I thought to myself that if I was able to climb back up into 12 by the end of the race, that would be enough for me. However, for that to work, at least some of the cars had to make a second pit stop, and mine took 11.6 seconds. That's a bit on the slow side of things, but I eventually rejoined the track in 15th. This was going to be tough. Believe it or not much has happened between my pit stop and the final lap, aside from the fact that a few cars decided to pit for a second time, which eventually helped me to climb back up into 12, as I followed David Coulthard to the finish line, who was one lap ahead of me. So I finished 12th, quite disappointing, and who knows what might have happened if Lacey didn't crash into me at the start of the race. Maybe, just maybe, I could have finished the race with at least 1 point. But there's no point in dwelling on that anymore. What's done is done, and it cannot be undone. Not a particularly promising start to the season, to be honest. Yes, there's still a long way to go, but I really would have liked to have at least a couple of points by now. Unfortunately, that didn't come to be. But there's always next time, right? Anyway, it is time to move on.
It's been a scintillating Malaysian Grand Prix. Let's take a look at the final results. Schumacher first. Coulthard second. Juan Pablo Montoya third. Hakkinen fourth. Nick Heidfeld fifth. Ralf Schumacher sixth. The BAR driver 12th. With the results confirmed, it's high time we updated the Drivers' Championship. Michael Schumacher moves further ahead in the Drivers' Championship.
Michael Schumacher stays in the lead, now with 20 points. David Coulthard moves up into second, now with 10 points. Ralf Schumacher drops into third with 7 points. Montoya and Heidfeld share fourth with 4 points. Hakkinen and Barrichello share fifth with 3 points. And Irvine is sixth with 1 point. Next we have the constructors.
Ferrari increase their lead at the top of the Constructors' Championship. McLaren are second, whilst third place is held by Williams.
Ferrari maintain their lead, now with 23 points. McLaren move up into second place with 13 points. Williams drop into third with 11 points. Fourth are Sauber with 4 points. And finally, Jaguar are fifth with 1 point. Well, that was not particularly what I was expecting from this race. Don't get me wrong, I was not expecting a podium, but after the last race I was hoping to do a bit better. Unfortunately, the collision with Lacey at the start of the race pretty much ruined any chance I might have had at scoring some points. Better luck next time, I guess. Speaking of which, our next race is in Brazil, and I'm quite excited about this one. Interlagos is a circuit I quite enjoy, and I am hopeful that the Brazilian Grand Prix will be the turning point in this season. But we'll have to wait and see. Until then, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, stay sharp.